Hi, everyone. I'm going to be talking to you today about the first half of September and the new moon that we have coming up in Virgo, either on the 2nd or the 3rd of the month, depending on where in the world you live. These next few months are going to be concentrated, colorful, eventful, intense at the 3D level. There are going to be lots of twists and turns and zigzags and switchbacks. So there is barely going to be an area of life on the 3D world that is going to stay the same. So just know that, because this is going to be very good training for us to stay in our eagle's perch, to stay in observer mode, and to keep coming back to the breath, coming back to our inner anchor and our peace and our calm. The more you can do that in all the ways I've talked about, the better it will serve you. As I say, it's going to be excellent training for our mastery in this. Now, I'm probably going to be doing the next update a little early, because the second half of September is very strong, in that we have the solar eclipse in Pisces on the 18th, and we also have the Libra equinox coming up as well. So I may do that, as I say, a few days early, but September, my goodness, it starts with a bang. Even a few days before we get into September, it starts with a bang, because on the 2nd of the month, we have Uranus moving stationary retrograde. And with these big outer archetypal planets, we feel those stations a few days to either side. So the symbolism is always magnified. It's like a huge ship slowly coming to a stationary position before it moves off into a different position. But the symbolism is always magnified. So Uranus, as you know, is the biggest symbol for earthquakes, volcanoes, seismic activity. That can be literal. It can be political earthquakes. It can be financial earthquakes, particularly because Uranus is still in Taurus. It can be power outages, electromagnetic disruptions, aviation disruptions. Uranus is the sky god in myth. It can be internet cutouts, shocks, surprises. It's the planet very linked to truth and awakening. And we are going to have a lot of truth and awakening coming into the fore for us. I think that's going to be unstoppable, really. It's also linked to Kundalini activation. It's linked to your sense of authenticity. So this is going to be at 27 degrees 15 minutes of Taurus. And this is the furthest that Uranus has got to in this cycle in its 84-year orbit. The last time it was at this point was at the end of 1941. That's, as it happens, when the US entered World War II after Pearl Harbor. That doesn't necessarily mean anything like that will happen again, but it's that kind of eruptive, explosive, unexpected, shocking kind of event. Could be electromagnetic in some way, because we're also at the peak of of solar cycle 25. So if you have anything between 26 to 28 degrees of the fixed signs, those are Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius, you may be feeling this kind of agitation, this restlessness, this greater need for freedom, to break away, to break the rules, to break through to a higher state of being, because Uranus is linked to higher mind, very much linked to your individual self-expression, your authenticity. So if you're feeling this revving up, particularly if you're in a stale relationship or job or situation in some way, there'll be this kind of agitation to break free. And really what the astrology is saying, that you need to follow those instincts, because if we don't do that voluntarily with Uranus, it tends to come at us with events from the other side to create that new situation quite suddenly. So I'm sure you understand what I'm saying here. So that is on the 2nd of September. That is the very same day that Pluto, which is now retrograde, tips back into the very last minute of Capricorn, 29 degrees, 59 minutes of Capricorn. And it's quite remarkable. And it stays at 29 degrees of Capricorn for the entire period, 2nd of September, 19th of November. This is the very last time Pluto will be in Capricorn in our lifetimes, because it's got a 248-year orbit. So it's the last time it will be in Capricorn at that anaretic, what's called the anaretic, the 29th degree of any sign known as the anaretic degree, or the crisis degree around the symbolism of that sign. And so what does that mean? I mean, particularly if you have anything around sort of 28 degrees to even getting into 1 degree of the fixed signs, and the cardinal signs, 28 degrees, cardinal signs are Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, tipping into kind of 1 degree of the fixed signs, which I just mentioned. You may be feeling this kind of intense pressure in some area of your life. And Pluto is really demanding that the snake sheds its skin. It's a very deep, fundamental change. Things will never be the same again in that area of life with Pluto transits like that. So Uranus tends to bring in radical, shocking, surprising, rapid change, whereas Pluto is deep dive. It often takes up to 2 years, a Pluto transit, whereas Uranus will take about 1 year. But Pluto is absolutely profound, fundamental change in your life with intensity. It's often situations where there are power plays or control or manipulation coming into your life in some way. Ultimately, Pluto transits are about our empowerment, but it's kind of stressy on the way in. It's linked to the myth of Persephone being kidnapped and going down to Hades, which I'll be talking about later in this video. So, isn't it interesting that on the day, 2nd of September, where we have this revolutionary, rebellious, riots, protests, uppity energy of everyone needs to be heard, demanding more freedom, demanding more human rights. That's Uranus. The very same day, Pluto moves into its last gasp of top-down power with Capricorn, top-down power. So what is this anaretic degree likely to be about, this crisis degree around Capricorn? And that the anaretic degree is when the kind of shadow expression of a sign can come in most strongly. So Capricorn, as I've talked to death, I think, over the last 3-4 years, is about top-down structures, like governments, corporations, institutions, those organizations that have held power over us in a kind of vertical social economic structure. They favor inequality, they favor elitism. And so we felt that very strongly, particularly over the last few years. So this may, while Pluto is in that last period of 2nd of September to 19th of November, bring in greater attempts at top-down power over us. And things are likely in that respect to be louder, but also more hollow. So just know that, because there may be a sense of, oh my goodness, the world is going backwards. Well, it isn't, because it's the last gasp, the last grasp, as it were, on that particular symbolism, but it may feel superficially like that. So, astrology is so helpful as a cosmic weather forecast to give us the deeper meaning. So it may feel that the world is going backwards. Don't engage with that kind of going backwards energy. Know that this too shall pass, because once Pluto moves into or re-enters Aquarius on the 19th of November for 20 years, that in Pluto is the planet of power. That will be the beginning of a shift of power to the people. It's not going to happen in a day, a month, a year. It's going to take some time. But if we look at historical patterns, particularly the late 1700s that I've talked about a lot, But even earlier phases of Pluto in Aquarius, of the 1500s, the 1200s, there was always a reduction of top-down power. And in the late 1700s in particular, a shift to more a shift of power to the people, more grassroots power, more communities coming together, artisan businesses, beginning of a middle class. This is like people's councils, people's assemblies, the power being held locally and in a decentralized manner rather than a top-down centralized manner. It's about decentralization, Aquarius energy. So that is the direction of travel, and that's where we need to put our own energy, not in the, oh my goodness, it's all going backwards back to centralization. Focus where the astrological energy is focused, the life force is focused on decentralization. Find your local groups, your local people, your like-minded people you can connect to either physically in person or online, and think community, think collaboration, think grassroots up, think people's councils, assemblies. Some of these exist. I know in England there's certain towns. I think they're called protector towns, like Frome and Totnes, and I believe Glastonbury, where they do have people's councils as well. Local people coming together in a very voluntary way to represent the people with a bigger voice. So that's where we are headed now. Also, a pivotal point with Pluto is going to be when it moves stationary direct again. That's going to be the 12th of October. And the few days around the 12th of October, I think, are big days around power in the world in some way. So that's the kind of backdrop to the beginning of this sort of 3-month period that we're moving into, which will be very eventful. Because this old system is collapsing, and it's meant to collapse to get us into a new episode for humanity. So now we have Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, all moving retrograde over the next few months. And that means that they're all closer to the Earth. Retrograde planets are always closer to the Earth. So all of those archetypes are going to be felt it's possible even more strongly over the next few months. And it's interesting that Uranus and Mars and Neptune are all at the last kind of couple of degrees, 3 degrees with Uranus, but 2 degrees with Mars, Neptune, the last couple of degrees of their signs. It's just, over and over again, we're getting emphasized endings and beginnings as we move through these very concentrated, accelerated years of evolution for humanity. Now, we'll move into looking at the chart for the new moon in just a moment. And just to say, it happens on the 2nd of September. And that is at 6:55 p.m. Pacific, but it's happening very early hours, as you'll see. It's actually happening at 2:55 on the clock a.m. UK time on the 3rd, and we'll look at that chart in just one moment. But just to remind you that on this same day as the new moon, we have Uranus moving stationary retrograde, magnified, revolutionary, rebellious, explosive, eruptive, combustible energy. At the same time, the heavy hand of Pluto power, top-down power, moves back into the anaretic degree of Capricorn. So that's like a kind of instant reaction to the more rebellious energy, if you follow my meaning. Okay, so now let's move into looking at the chart for the full moon. And this will be 2nd of September if you live in America, 3rd of September, UK, east of the UK. Let's look at this now. So this new moon in Virgo is happening on the 3rd, and I always set this chart for the UK or London. This is where I live. And this is happening on the clock, we're still in British summertime, 2:55 UK time. So a lot to say here. This new moon is where the sun and the moon are always together at a new moon. This is at 11 degrees, 4 minutes of Virgo. So see where that falls in your chart, and don't forget to set a new intention for whatever new seed you want to plant at this time, that you want to manifest in your life. Now, it's interesting to look sometimes at the Sabian symbols. Sabian symbols were downloaded by a medium called Elsie Wheeler way back. I think it was in the 50s, I think, and they all have kind of poetic meaning. And what you do with the Sabian symbols is you always round up to the next degree before you read them. So in this case, we'll round up to 12 degrees of Virgo. And I'm taking these Sabian symbols from someone called Blaine Bovey. And the Sabian symbol is a bride with her veil snatched away. A bride with her veil snatched away. And this is about, as Blaine explains, the joy of revelation, but the pain of exposure. And I think that's really interesting, considering what we've been saying about truth coming to light. Such a time of truth. And I'm going to be speaking this week to both Hope Fitzgerald and Nancy Rebecca about their view about those that kind of thing coming to light at this time. So with Virgo, let's talk about Virgo energy first of all. Virgo is to do with, it's an energy of wanting to get things right, getting them exact, getting them precise, dotting the I's, crossing the T's. People who have strong Virgo energy are wonderful for bringing order out of chaos. They are the list makers. They're very logical, they're methodical, they're efficient, they want to categorize everything, tidy it all up, get everything in whatever they're dealing with running like clockwork. They often are working with the body because Virgo is very linked to health, nutrition, digestion. But they're also very often working with feng shui. So cleaning up your energy, decluttering. It's a fantastic time at this time to declutter your home, but also declutter your thinking, your energy. Virgo is ruled by Mercury. So it's when you get into that kind of unconscious grunge of, I'm not young enough, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not rich enough, whatever, to declutter the mind, to stop those negative unconscious runs of self-talk. So as I've often suggested, put post-it notes around your house, on kitchen cupboards, bathroom mirrors. What are you thinking about? What's your frequency? So become much more conscious and aware as you move through your day of your thinking, because Virgo is also ruled by Mercury. So it's kind of cleaning up your environment. It's also cleaning up your health, your energy in general. This is a time when a lot of energy blocks are coming to light, whether they are our own or they are ancestral or generational or from past lives. A lot is coming up to be cleared in our energy field right now. And we have to do that to move to the next levels, as it were. So Virgo is the sign more than any other of cleansing, of clearing, of detoxifying and purifying. Virgo is very linked to purity, purifying the energy system. And it was very interesting at Lion's Gate that there were a group of very experienced meditators on the Hill of Tara. The Hill of Tara, a very sacred site. And during the meditation, the whole group, got a very clear message of how important it was for us as humanity to purify our energy at every level to optimize the effect of the solar flares. So that is physical, it's cleaning up our diet, it's getting rid of our addictions, it's cleaning ourselves up psychologically, mentally, all of these things I've just been talking about, because then we can best optimize the solar flares, which are ingredients for our evolution. If we're grungy, if we're still in some kind of addiction, we're going to get minimal benefit from the solar flare. So that's down to us. It's down to our own practices of cleansing, clearing, and purification. So very interesting. Virgo is also connected with our day-to-day routine. It's the little things in life. It's those little acts of kindness. You know, can you do some shopping for your neighbor? Can you walk her dog? Can you help an old lady across the road? It's those little acts of kindness. That's very linked to Virgo, the little things, because Virgo is to do with how can I be of practical service to you? How can I make soup? What can I do to help you? And these little acts of kindness through the day. And it's these small acts that actually end up adding up to change the world if we all did that, isn't it? And it's also about finding joy in the small things, in all of the awful things, the horrors that are happening in the world. I think it's incumbent on us, unless we are going through a period of personal grief where we've lost someone, we're in bereavement, where obviously, we've got to honor those deep, deep feelings. As far as we are able, I think it's incumbent on us in our sovereignty, in our courage, to find joy in the small things, to find joy in laughing with a friend, in hugging a tree, in listening to the bird song, to celebrating blue skies. Find joy, be focused on finding joy in every way you can through your day, because that in itself, I think, is an act of courage and an act of defiance, even an act of sovereignty in terms of where we're going. I'm sure you all understand that. Virgo is the sign most linked to humility. And my personal view is, if we are to ascend to these higher dimensions, this expanded consciousness, we must be in a state of humility, integrity, simplicity, that's very linked to Virgo and Taurus, and authenticity. That's very linked to Uranus, our authenticity, very strong at these times, and also sovereignty. So humility, Virgo, integrity, linked to Saturn, simplicity, linked to Virgo and Taurus, authenticity, linked to Uranus, and sovereignty, linked to many things, actually, linked to Uranus, linked to Aries energy, Leo energy, Eris. There are many planets and signs that come up when I'm thinking of sovereignty. And we, of course, as humanity, we are learning to step back into our sovereignty, something we've never fully known, I'd suggest, for many lifetimes. So the other thing, Virgo, as I say, is very linked to health, the microbiome, the gut health in particular, the little very tiny bacteria in our system that provide us with good health. That's the foundation of good health. As I've mentioned in the past, Pisces is also linked to health, more to do with the blood and the immune system. And Saturn is opposing this new moon, sun and moon. Now, that can suggest there's some issue or limitation, Saturn, around the blood and the immune system for some people. It also suggests that we could be entering a period of more rules again, more rules, regulations, Saturn around health, because Pisces is also linked to things like viruses. Neptune is at the anoretic degree of Pisces, it rules Pisces, so again, a crisis degree around issues of blood, immune system, viruses. Because Pluto has backtracked now into Capricorn and Saturn rules Capricorn, again, this is top-down power that we're moving into for 2.5 months, we could see this resurgence around rules and regulations around health, something to do with viruses. That's a possibility, particularly also because we will all probably be aware that there was a very, very big, important conjunction between Saturn and Pluto on the 12th of January 2020, just as the pandemic was beginning. And that historically, again, if I look back through the ages of when that's happened before, it has been linked to historically an abuse of power. And now for the first time, we have the first hard aspect, the testing of that conjunction, as it were, between Saturn and Pluto, because it's very faint here actually, but there's a semi-square 45-degree angle. It's within 1 degree of warp, 45-degree angle between Saturn and Pluto. First hard aspect that is testing where have we got to since that conjunction in January 2020. And so, again, this reinforces that there may be some, attempt around rules, regulations to do with health, etc. But at the same time, we have some more rebellious, more feisty energy. I've just talked about Uranus becoming stationary retrograde the day before this new moon. We also have the sun and moon. Again, this is such a complex chart, actually. I don't know why you can see this, but it is they are sesquiquadrate Eris. That's 135-degree aspect. Eris is warrior sister of Mars. In the myth that she was the only goddess not invited to the wedding, so she turned up anyway and created mayhem by throwing the golden apple into the group of goddesses and saying, for the fairest. And that argument between them is said to lead to the Trojan War. So she is an energy around truth, justice, equality, every voice being heard, a more uppity, feisty energy. Also, Pluto is in this very long-term square to Eris here. This is top-down power versus, sovereign power. Aries is I am, it's sovereign power. And also, apart from the station of Uranus the day before this new moon, we also have Mercury square to Uranus. So this is about shocks, surprises, truth coming to light. It can be about original ideas, genius ideas, thinking out of the box, lateral thinking as well at this time. So there's more, more feisty energy. This was, all of this kind of awakening and truth was very strong around Lion's Gate and also full supermoon on the 19th of August. So I think the other thing to say here, which is really very exact, within 4 minutes of exactitude, is that Mars is at the anaretic degree. So many planets at the last few degrees of their signs, because Uranus is not at the anaretic degree quite yet. That's really the last degree of any sign, but it's getting there. It's getting close there, and it will get there in 2025. It's in the last 3 degrees of its sign. Mars is within 4 minutes of the anaretic degree of Gemini, and it's within 4 minutes of an exact square to Neptune, which is at its anaretic degree in Pisces. So both of them, in fact, are not only at their anaretic degrees, the crisis degree around the symbolism of that sign, but also they are on the world axis. The world axis is at 0 degrees of the cardinal signs: Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn. So anything from 28 degrees of the mutable signs, Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, Pisces, up to 2 degrees of the cardinal signs, that is considered on the world axis, where big events could be thrown on to the world stage. Okay, so first thing I'd say here is be very careful around your words, Gemini. This is angry words. Be very careful on social media. Take a breath before you respond. Take a breath before you respond, especially if you're irritated by someone or something, there's anger coming at you. Be very careful, because this can lead to something bigger, which, is what you absolutely don't want. So spats on social media, certainly. Mars has just passed its Mars return for the US. I believe Mars in the US chart is at 21 degrees of Gemini. Not such a big deal because Mars's orbit is around 2 years. So every 2 years it comes back to that point. But given that everything else that's happening in the bigger picture, there could be something happening. That was around about that's happening sort of late, the last few weeks that's been happening, 28 degrees. Let me just check exactly when it was at 21 of Gemini. Yeah, that's happening in late August. Yeah, that's happening 21st, 22nd of August. So we're not quite there yet. But also, so this could be angry words around anything to do with health or viruses that's coming up at this time. There could be big issues around water, Pisces, toxic water, pollution, could be tsunamis, that kind of thing. But this can also be battles at sea. Battles at sea, this almost exact square. So we will see what unfolds. It makes the truth harder to penetrate because Neptune, particularly in Pisces, is to do with things that are foggy, not quite clear, smoke and mirrors. So you have to use your discernment. That's very linked to Virgo. Drop into your heart, drop into your breath to know what is truth for you. You may have to go through layers of what's true for me. Always drop into your heart to find your own truth. Now, I've done a separate video on the square between Jupiter and Saturn. This was exact at the full supermoon on the 19th of August, and Jupiter's just starting to pull away a little bit. So 19 of Gemini to 16 of Saturn. But this lasts, in fact, until June 2025. It's exact on the 19th of August, it's exact again on the 24th of December, and exact again on the 15th of June next year. The separate video I've done describes how this may manifest personally, but just to again reinforce, this may bring up issues around legitimacy and legality of top-down structures, Saturn, or of governments, of corporations, of institutions, that kind of thing. This is also about the past versus the future, the old versus the new, the big expansive future horizons, or Jupiter's the planet of expansion, versus the contraction around anything fearful to do with health, viruses, blood, immune system, could be water as well. So they're very antithetical, really, in their symbolism. Also, we have, and I've mentioned this, I think, in the last video, that Jupiter is very close to Altjira, a Kuiper belt object, Altjira. And it becomes exact, I think this is, let me check again, it becomes exact again in late September, kind of mid-September onwards. And Altjira, as I mentioned last time, this is connected to the mythology of the Australian Aboriginal people who talk about the big dreaming, and they believe that every soul has a permanent presence in what they call the big dreaming, that we create from our imagination, from our dreaming, which of course we've always done, we just haven't been very conscious of it. And that the big dreaming, in fact, is more real than what we understand to be our everyday 3D reality. So it's really beautiful, really big thinking, big expanse of dreaming, imagination, etc. Another fascinating aspect of Altjira is that it encourages you to lose your social programming, which has compromised your authenticity. So we're back to authenticity. Super strong theme here. What is also very strong, there's so much to say here. What is very strong is that Ceres, the goddess of harvests and grains at 7 degrees of Capricorn, is in an exact T-square to the North Node, 7 degrees of Aries. And remember that the South Node is always, always, always exactly opposite. So it's not normally shown in a chart. That's at 7 degrees of Libra. So Ceres is in a T-square. Now, Ceres has a 4.6-year orbit, so it's going to be moving on quite soon, but it's exact here. So it's really emphasizing this, that the nodal axis, the North Node, in a kind of global chart, is our soul's collective path of growth. So there's something here about agriculture, grains, food growing, that we are needing to learn. We are needing to advance in a different way. Now, remember the myth of Ceres that many of you know. Was Ceres was the mother of Persephone. And Persephone was kidnapped and taken down to Hades, down to hell. And Ceres was absolutely distraught. And in her absolutely distraught state, she made the earth barren. She made the earth barren as a kind of negotiating tactic to get her daughter back. And she'd warned her daughter Persephone not to eat anything when she was in Hades. And so as a result of the earth being barren, Ceres struck a deal with Jupiter that her daughter was returned to her. But when Persephone came back to her mother, she confessed that she had eaten 4 pomegranate seeds in Hades. So what that meant is that Persephone has to go back to the underworld for 4 months of the year. But spring arrives when she returns back to Ceres, back to her mother. That myth is said to have created the seasons, the winter and then moving back into spring. So this is fascinating in that we can't grow food during those barren winter periods. And we know that there are many parts of the world where it's very hard to grow food right now because of extreme earth events of various kinds, weather or unnatural agricultural practices, whatever. So what is interesting here is that we are going to have to learn new ways of doing this, and that's what's highlighted here. Now, Ceres is conjunct, this little glyph here is Quawa, Quaoar. You may remember I've talked about Quawa in the past. Quawa is the creator god of the Tongva people who originally lived around the Los Angeles basin. And Quawa realizes that although there is prevailing chaos, which was part of the myth, you cannot create from chaos because it's too low frequency. You have to come together in community. So Quawa is very much linked to community, to sing and dance, to raise the vibration, to then create from that higher frequency. So although Quawa is about joy and about community, I think the core of the symbolism is around vibration, around frequency. How we are going to learn to use frequency in food growth in a different way, a more evolved way. And the reason I say that as well is Salacia, a wonderful dwarf planet, I love Salacia, is part of this T-square. Salacia is at 10 degrees of Aries, so it's conjunct the North Node. Salacia, as you might remember, is mermaid energy. She's linked to the shimmering moonlight, sunlight on the sea. I believe she's very linked to photonic light, that very sparkly white diamond light. It's coming in with the photonic light and also, I believe, with the solar flares. So Salacia is about the light. Vade Austin, in her beautiful work, is talking about water as condensed light, because water is just another point on the spectrum of creation, if you like. Water is condensed light. And so we're dealing with light in this T-square. We're dealing with vibration, with Quawa. And as well as love being part of the picture, with Venus here creating food from love, from light, from high frequency, we've also this glyph is I'm going to pronounce this wrongly, I'm sure, because people write and correct me. Maki Maki. Maki Maki at 9 of Libra is the creator god of Easter Island, linked to the Rapa Nui people. You will know from the actual history, and you can read about this in history books of Easter Island, that it was pillaged by the European sailors who came in and brought rats and disease, and they chopped down all the trees, and Easter Island was just wrecked. You know, the whole, what had once been a thriving ecosystem was wrecked. And Easter Island at one point got down to 111 inhabitants, but because the residents of Easter Island had knowledge of how to live in harmony with the earth, in balance with nature, they were able, from that tiny population, to turn that situation around and take Easter Island back to a thriving ecosystem. Easter Island is also said to be one of the areas where the Lemurian frequency went after the Great Flood. And so the fact it's in Libra as well talks about harmony and balance back with nature. It is also believed that one of the things that helped that regeneration, Maki is very linked to regeneration of nature, is that there's a naturally occurring chemical in the soil called rapamycin, which is linked to regeneration, food growth, and longevity. You can even buy rapamycin now as a food supplement, as a supplement for longevity. It's really quite expensive, I think, but isn't that interesting? And, you know, of course, we also have the square, long-running square that I've talked about often between Pluto and Haumea here, Haumea being very linked to regeneration. But there's something here that I think humanity is learning at this time, and will learn a great deal more, around light, frequency, harmony with nature, that we've known, that we'll remember from ancient times, in terms of how we can bring much stronger crop yield through understanding some of those principles. I feel very excited about that, because I think that's actually where that is going. Also, just to remind you that Saturn here is conjunct Nessus, a centaur called Nessus, who I talked about at some length in a recent update. And rather than repeat everything I said there, I will find that update and put the link for that below, because Nessus has some extremely relevant symbolism for us around blood and immune system, etc. That really fits for the period that we are in. Also, just to say that although Ceres will start to move on quite quickly, this T-square between Salacia, Quawa, and Maki is going to be there for quite some years. This is long term. This isn't just the new moon in Virgo, quite some years, because they all have very similar orbits. Salacia has a 274-year orbit. Quawa has a 284-year orbit, very, very similar. They're going to be in square for quite some years to come. Maki has a 305-year orbit. So that T-square, the Ceres is going to move on, the nodal axis is going to move on, but right now they are lit up. That T-square is lit up because that's what, and of course, Virgo is to do with harvests, isn't it? That's the sign that we go to for harvests and grains. Think of the glyph of the sheaf of wheat for Virgo. But it's also, what are we harvesting? It isn't just the literal food stuff, but what are we harvesting at this point in our lives, in this accelerated, concentrated period of evolution? So there is going to be 10 tons happening in the outer world. 10 tons, drama, color, switchbacks, zigzags, twists and turns in pretty much every area of life. Keep it simple. Stay calm. Stay peaceful. turn inwards, drop into the heart, drop into the breath. In going inwards, in going into the heart and into the breath, as often as you can, feel that sense of expanded consciousness. Feel like the heart and the breath are the portal. You go inwards, as it were, to the breath and the heart to feel that sense of expansion in our consciousness. Because once we start to feel that, we can easily hop onto very different timelines and experience very different things in our multidimensionality. But the way in is not complicated. The way in is really simple. And it's linked to the breath and it's linked to the heart. Super simple. Keep it simple. Turn inwards. That's where your sovereignty lies. That's where your authenticity lies, your integrity and your humility. Go inwards. So I'll stop sharing here. And I'd like to sort of share a couple of quotes with you that I think are really relevant right now. One is a quote from Krishnamurti, the mystic who I love. And he says, "The world is a projection of yourself. It cannot be transformed until you are." It's an inside job. That edition of It's an Inside Job comes from me, not Krishnamurti, but it is, because everything in the world is just a projection of us. You know, our individual reality is a projection of our individual consciousness. The collective reality out there with all of its awfulness and horrors is a result of our collective consciousness. And that's why it's so, so, so vital if we are able, you know, acknowledging the loss and the grief that every single one of us is feeling right now, and the absolute acknowledgement of the horror in the world. And this isn't, you know, it absolutely is not ignoring the horror, the wars, the disease, the death, the misery, the poverty. It is because it's so awful that I'm doing these videos. It's because it's so horrific that I feel we've got to up our game and raise our consciousness in very simple ways to get to a point where it's unthinkable that these things ever happen, that we cannot harm each other in the way we are doing right now, and we've done throughout our lifetimes. It's just in, you know, I haven't, I don't judge any other person with it. I haven't eaten meat in 50 years. I could not do that. I just couldn't. And you know, as I said, I grieve if a tree is felled. You know, I feel it. And that's not any kind of, you know, I'm better than you. I mean, we're all on the journey. But it's, if we get to a level of consciousness where it is absolutely unthinkable for us to kill or harm another living being because they're part of us, it's part of the oneness, that's, I think, where we're starting to make some progress. And another quote I'd like to share with you, and I just came across this by chance, but it was so Virgoan. It was so humble, and it really touched me deeply, and that's why I want to share it with you. And this is from a lady called L.R. Knost, I think it's pronounced. It's K-N-O-S-T, and she does a lot around gentle parenting. But this is a beautiful quote, and it's, you know, it's all about humility, and it's about what is actually happening in the world because a parallel society is being built. You won't see it, you won't hear it. You've got to connect with it via frequency, and then you'll start to, by synchronicity, meet the people, the circumstances, that you start to connect with these people, and a whole world opens up for you. You're not going to see it on the news. So this is her quote, which I think is beautiful. "Here's to the bridge builders, the hand holders, the light bringers, those extraordinary souls wrapped in ordinary lives who quietly weave threads of humanity into an inhumane world. They are the unsung heroes in a world at war with itself. They are the whisperers of hope that peace is possible. Look for them in this present darkness. Light your candle with their flame, and then go. build bridges, hold hands, bring light to a dark and desperate world. Be the hero you are looking for. Peace begins with us. I just love that. She doesn't know I'm quoting her, by the way, but I just think that's really beautiful. And the final thing I'd like to say, because it is quite linked to Virgo. Virgo is the sixth sign, and so in a natural horoscope, that's linked to the sixth house. As many of you know, the sixth house is linked to animals, smaller animals, cats, dogs, pets. The 12th house is actually linked to large animals like horses, elephants, giraffes, but that axis, 6th, 12th, is linked to animals. And I happened to connect with a lady in America called Amelia Kirkade recently. And just to say that she does some very, very beautiful work with animals. From a very tiny age, she's been able to communicate with animals, hear them, heal them. And she doesn't just work with cats and dogs, she works with lions and tigers and elephants and really big animals. But she's doing some beautiful, beautiful work with beings that otherwise would not have a voice, would not be heard. But the reason I'm mentioning her to you is not only because of her beautiful work, it's to signal that she is ahead of the pack, as it were, because we are all going to start to develop in time to that same level of psychic sensitivity, of expanded consciousness, of multidimensionality, of telepathy, so we could all connect to other living beings, to the animals, to the trees, to the plants, to the bugs, we are all going to have that increased sensitivity, that increased psychic ability, and that expanded consciousness to develop this much greater sense of oneness that we are moving towards in our humility, integrity, sovereignty, and authenticity. A lot there today. I hope some of it was helpful for you. Big months. We have really big months coming up. So please keep it simple. Drop into the breath, drop into the heart, and form your individual bliss bubble. I can actually drop into bliss very easily. And that may seem kind of a ridiculous thing to say in a very dramatic times, but if we can each do that, if we can each drop into a bliss bubble and connect our bliss bubbles across the world, so we're forming these footprints, these ladders, this web of light across the world, then we are actually creating a whole grid, a whole map of light for everyone to connect to. And that's when things become very accelerated as we step into or remember our light beings and our light bodies. God bless. Bye for now. I'll be back very soon. Thank you for listening.